Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. No guests today, you'll be sad to hear. Let me start off by giving you some quick overnight figures for those that are interested. In France, the 31st of July, 11.68 million viewers watched Léon Marchand's gold medal performance. This becomes the highest Olympic sports competition audience in France since Athens 2004. China, the gold medal mixed doubles table tennis match, the most watched broadcast of the Games to date, 48.54 million viewers, higher than any broadcast during Tokyo 2020. Digital, the Olympics web and apps surpassed 200 million users for Paris. And the Olympics continue to drive significant digital interest in France, now tracking 9 times higher than in Tokyo on Google Trends. I have down here 23 gold medal events today, and the President has gone to Marseille to see some sailing. So over to you, Anne. That's my announcements.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Je vais parler en français ce matin. Donc, bienvenue pour ce 10e jour de compétition des Jeux de Paris 2024. Encore une très très belle journée de sport en perspective. Le public va être nombreux pour soutenir les athlètes. On attend plus de 727 000 spectateurs sur cette journée. Et c'est aussi déjà le 10e jour de compétition. Le temps passe très très vite avec déjà le démontage de notre premier site de compétition, le site de VTT à la colline d'Elancourt, qui me permet ce matin de vous rappeler la démarche de Paris 2024 sur le réemploi du matériel pour l'événement. Au total, pour les Jeux, ce sont plus de 6 millions de biens, d'équipements qui sont nécessaires pour organiser les compétitions. Et pour tous ces équipements, on a voulu proposer un modèle plus responsable pour penser la vie de l'après-jeu avant les Jeux. Donc le premier enjeu pour nous, je vais être rapide, c'était d'abord de produire que le nécessaire. Et cette stratégie, elle a commencé par 95% d'équipements temporaires et existants pour organiser les compétitions, mais aussi de privilégier la location à l'achat. Et donc sur les 6 millions d'équipements, 90% seront repris par des prestataires et des partenaires des Jeux. 100% du mobilier, par exemple, aura une solution de seconde vie et 100% des matériaux et des structures temporaires seront réemployés, réutilisés ou recyclés. Voilà. Et l'objectif, c'était aussi de produire mieux grâce à l'éco-conception. Et donc, par exemple, le look des Jeux, la signalétique ont été éco-conçus avec des matériaux durables comme le bois ou le carton. Si vous souhaitez en savoir plus, n'hésitez pas à consulter notre service de presse. Merci à tous.
Okay, we're actually going to go straight to questions and answers today. So, Carlos Groman.
Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Mark. A question for the IOC. Given that the issue of the boxer came up yesterday, and we've got another boxer fighting today, there is a lack of a recognized international federation. So the IOC is running the competition. How do you plan to stop this wave of negative press regarding both these two boxers and also the unfair or potentially unfair competition that affects the other boxers? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, maybe, in fact, some people have asked me if I could start by reading the statement we put out last night, particularly for TV. So maybe that might be, because that actually explains quite a lot as well. So we've got plenty of time. I think I'll just go through it to start with, and then I'll come to the question. So this was the statement that was put out last night. Every person has the right to practice sport without discrimination. All athletes participating in the boxing tournament of the Olympic Games Paris 2024 comply with the competition's eligibility rules and entry regulations, as well as all applicable medical regulations set by the Paris 2024 Boxing Unit, PBU. As with previous Olympic boxing competitions, the gender and age of the athletes are based on their passport. These rules are also applied during the qualification period, including the boxing tournaments of the 2023 European Games, the Asian Games, the Pan American Games and the Pacific Games, the ad hoc 2023 African qualifying tournament in Dakar, and 2 world qualifying tournaments held in Busto Arsizio in Italy and Bangkok in 2024, which involved a total of 1,471 different boxers from 172 national Olympic committees. The boxing refugee team and individual neutral athletes also, and featured over 2,000 qualification bouts. The PB used the Tokyo 2020 boxing rules as a baseline to develop its regulations for Paris 2024. This was to minimise the impact on athletes' preparations and guarantee consistency between Olympic Games. These 2020 rules were based on the post-Rio 2016 rules, which were in place before the suspension of the Boxing International Federation by the IOC in 2019 and the subsequent withdrawal of its recognition in 2023. We've seen in reports misleading information about two female athletes competing in the Olympic Games Paris 2024. The two athletes have been competing in international boxing competitions for many years in the women's category, including at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, International Boxing Association World Championships and IBA-sanctioned tournaments. These two athletes were the victims of a sudden and arbitrary decision by the IBA. Towards the end of the IBA World Championships in 2023, they were suddenly disqualified without any due process. According to the IBA minutes available on their website, this decision was taken initially solely by the IBA Secretary General and CEO. The IBA board only ratified it afterwards and only subsequently requested that a procedure to follow in similar cases in the future be established and reflected in the IBA regulations. The minutes also say that the IBA should establish a clear procedure on gender testing. The current aggression against these two athletes is based entirely on this arbitrary decision, which was taken without any proper procedure, especially considering that these athletes had been competing in top-level competition for many years. Such an approach is contrary to good governance. Eligibility rules should not be changed during an ongoing competition, and any rules change must follow appropriate processes and should be based on scientific evidence. The IOC is committed to protecting the human rights of all athletes participating in the Olympic Games, as per the Olympic Charter, the IOC Code of Ethics, and the IOC Strategic Framework on Human Rights. The IOC is saddened by the abuse that the two athletes are currently receiving. The IBA's recognition was withdrawn by the IOC in 2023 following its suspension in 2019. The withdrawal of recognition was confirmed by the Court of Arbitration in Sport. The IOC has made it clear that it needs national boxing federations to reach a consensus around a new international federation in order for boxing to be included on the sports programme of Olympic Games LA 2028. Sorry for reading that in full, and now I come to your question. Some of it was already answered, Carlos, I hope and I think, but clearly we say there, and I think everyone would agree, you don't change the rules during a competition. No one should change the rules during a competition. Everyone needs to have certainty of the rules of competition. On the wider issue, there still is neither scientific or political consensus on this issue. It's not a black and white issue, and we would at the IOC be very interested to hear of such a solution, such a consensus on this, and we would be the first to act on this should a common understanding be reached. But as we say, that has yet to be the case across sport in general. I hope that answers your question, Carlos. Jacqueline Magnier, just there.
Hi, Mark. Jacqueline Magnier from The Australian. In your statement, I noticed that you made no reference to the injuries suffered by an athlete in competition, and I was wondering if you're also saddened at that occurred. And if I may ask just a secondary question, you say every person has a right to participate without discrimination, but what do you say to the women who believe that they don't know the chromosomal outcome of whom they're facing, and that they are facing people who have failed gender tests in the past?
On the injury, what I would say is, of course, we always don't like to see an injury to any athlete, and obviously this injury, like all the others, we hope that she makes a good and full recovery. She's talked about it in the post-bout press conference, and we wish her all the best, obviously. In terms of sex testing, which, as you know, finished in, I think, 1999 from memory, I don't think anyone in either the athlete or the political or the scientific community, even if there were a sex test that everyone agreed with and everyone agreed with the criteria, I don't think anyone wants to see a return to some of the scenes. And I've talked to some, I know some of those athletes who underwent sex tests in their teens. It was pretty disgraceful, and luckily that is behind us. This is a minefield, and unfortunately, as with all minefields, we want a simple explanation. Everyone wants a black and white explanation of how we can determine this. That explanation does not exist, neither in the scientific community nor anywhere else. As I've said before, if we can find a consensus, and we will work towards a consensus, we will certainly work to apply that. Clearly that's not going to happen at these games, but this is a question also, I guess, in all sports. And I think we are open to listen to anyone with a solution to that question. Yeah, let's go to the gentleman here in front.
Hi, Mark. Jerry Longman with the New York Times. I'd like to ask a question, then a follow-up. So the 2016 rules, were you referring to the IOC suggestion from late 2015, the guideline that athletes must or should keep their testosterone level below a certain point for 12 months before allowing to compete, or are you referring to boxing rules? And what were those rules? They don't appear to have any clear rules. Maybe you know what they are. And I'd like to ask a follow-up too.
Yeah, so my understanding is that those are the boxing rules, and there is a link to those. There's a 10-page document that we put out last night, which you can look at.
They don't. But they say in that document
Well, largely the question, if we're talking about the question of sex, it is like many, many sports related to sex, as noted on the passport.
Right. But they said in that, I think the minutes you were referring to, that they need a clear program, that they didn't have a clear program.
There are eligibility rules which are linked to in the document.
And then, because there were such unclear rules, when the IOC became the de facto IF for boxing, did you feel or why didn't you feel the need to issue some guidelines?
I don't think they're unclear. And I said I don't think they're unclear. I mean, I'm not a sports practitioner. I work for the IOC, but I don't directly get involved in putting on sports competition. But those rules, or a version of them, were used for 2016 Olympic Games and 2020 Olympic Games.
That's what I'm trying to find out. Can you tell me what those rules were?
Yeah, they're linked to on the statement we put out last night. So it's 10 pages, so having already read you 2 pages, I don't think I can read you another 10 pages. Yes, gentleman over there.
Thanks, Mark. Richard Carter from AFP. Can you just help me understand a little bit about the eligibility criteria? On Iman Khalif's MyInfo profile yesterday, it was stated she'd been disqualified from the World Championships in Delhi for elevated levels of testosterone. Now, unless I'm mistaken, that information is no longer on the profile this morning. So I just wanted to be clear. What is the IOC's understanding as to why the boxers were disqualified by the IBA in Delhi?
We don't really know. It was an arbitrary decision taken overnight by the CEO and then subsequently agreed later. It may have had something to do with the results beforehand, not liking the results that had happened. But we don't really know. We haven't had that. And there are suspicions all the time about, or can be suspicions about people's sex. Unfortunately, it's not up to, or fortunately, it's not up to us to act on all those suspicions, because if we did, I think we would be dealing with that from now till forever. So the eligibility on this specific issue is if their national document, their passport, has them as a woman. And just to kind of reiterate, the Algerian boxer was born female, was registered female, lived her life as a female, boxed as a female, has a female passport. This is not a transgender case. I know you're not saying that, but there has been some confusion that somehow it's a man fighting a woman. This is just not the case. Scientifically, On that, there is consensus. Scientifically, this is not a man fighting a woman, and I think we need to kind of get that out. Sorry, yes, you want to follow up?
Just to follow up, if I may, because I'm not wrong to say that on her MyInfo profile, the IOC had said that the IBA had disqualified them because of an elevated level of testosterone, but that now seems to have been removed from her profile, and again, unless I'm mistaken. So, can you explain why that's okay?
It's a fact, but we felt that we were just elevating a rule which had been taken arbitrarily, or a decision arbitrarily, into a truth which it wasn't.
So it's a fact that the IBA disqualified them for elevated levels of testosterone.
I don't know. I understand, but it's not really clear. I think that's the case. I would have to go back to the.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go down here. Yeah.
Something not related to boxing. Yesterday, Peter Palchik won a bronze medal in judo from Israel. He celebrated by kissing a military flag with some of the audience there. And earlier this week, there was a video from the Olympic Village where he spoke highly of the brave and proud IDF soldiers. According to the Olympic Charter, one of the fundamental principles of Olympism is promoting a peaceful society. Athletes are not allowed to do political statements, including using political flags. So isn't this two breaches of the Olympic Charter? And if no, why? If yes, what's the consequences?
Okay, I mean, I haven't seen those particular ones, but what I would say is there's very strong and clear athlete expression guidelines. We continue to remind NOCs of what those guidelines are, not just the Israelis. All NOCs have to comply by those guidelines, so obviously we'll take a look at that.
But I sent you the video of the statements he did in the Olympic Village 2 days ago.
To me, personally?
To IOC media.
Well, I haven't seen it myself, but yeah, okay. But we will go back to them again and remind them about the need to follow the athlete expression guidelines.
So you will remind the person that is finished with this Olympic competitions?
So we will remind the NOC that they need to comply with those guidelines.
So no consequences?
Well, we'll wait and see what happens, but yeah. Okay, gentleman right in front is eager to ask a question.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan Crane from Deutsche Welle, bringing it back to boxing. I mean, you've been in quite a long dispute with the IBA. I'm just wondering whether that dispute, animosity, has clouded your judgment a bit on the matter, and whether, knowing that they were disqualified at the World Championships, could you have nipped this in the bud a bit earlier and prevented some of the abuse that we have been seeing on social media? And linked to that, Umar Kremlev, the president of the IBA, has put out, I would say, some pretty unsavory videos in recent days, especially targeting the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach. What is your comment and reaction to those? Thank you.
On the second issue, I think that no one likes to see aggression online by anyone, and we've had quite a few cases of online aggression against a whole range of athletes, even in the boxing issue, and that is not acceptable. So we would hope that stops. I'm not sure we're able to stop that, but it's not helpful, and it doesn't help with the games to come together. Could we have nipped it in the bud? I think the question you have to ask yourself is, are these athletes women? The answer is yes, according to eligibility, according to their passports, according to their history. A test which may have happened overnight was a made-up test, which is new. I don't think we should give that any credence at all. If we start acting on every issue, every allegation that comes up, then we start having the kind of witch hunts that we're having now. But yes,
I mean, you kind of, and following on for the AFP question, you kind of did give it credence because it was on the website.
It's a factual thing that they did.
So why was it on the website and now taken down?
Because it's a factual thing. We write bios. I don't personally write them, but the bios are written for all of the athletes.
That then appears to give it credence.
I'm afraid so, but it's factual, and so it happened, unfortunately. Yes, sir, in the front here, right at the front.
Thank you. André Fontinelli for São Paulo, Brazil. Two questions. First, will these two boxers are still in competition? Will the IOC follow more closely their situation or provide any kind of support, psychological support, or to be attentive to their situation in the following days? And the second question has something to do with the question about the Israeli judoka. A few days ago, I asked the IOC press office about the religious gesture of a Brazilian skater. And the IOC said they got in touch with the Brazilian NOC to remind them of Rule 50 of the Olympic Charter. But I talked to the Brazilian NOC and they said that they received no formal communication from the IOC, that it was just, let's say, a non-formal communication. I'd like to know whether the IOC does non-formal communication to the NOCs. Thank you.
Yeah, just to take the second one first. Yes, non-formal communication with NOCs goes on all the time. We're in constant contact with all of them, all the 200 plus NOCs that we have here. So it wouldn't be surprising to me that there was either a conversation, telephone call. Not everything has to be formally and written down. I don't know about this case because I wasn't involved in it, but it wouldn't surprise me if a quiet word was had and a reminder of rules was had. And sorry, the first question? Yes, I just remembered, sorry. Yeah, we have been in touch from yesterday in terms of safeguarding. It's quite a serious case. There's an awful lot of abuse going on online, an awful lot of misinformed abuse going on online. And yes, we are in very close contact with the athletes and their entourages.
Maybe you come back to me after just to confirm if the communication to the Brazilian NOC was formal or just a... from up here, I didn't even know about that. So I can come back to you, or we can come back to you and find out if it was formal or non-formal and what exactly that might mean. But yes, gentlemen here in the front.
Bonjour Anne, bonjour Marc, Bruno Fraioli, sportbusiness.club. J'ai trois petites questions qui parlent pas de boxe. D'abord, est-ce que vous pouvez nous rappeler le total des spectateurs depuis le début, ce qu'on a du total par jour, si vous avez un chiffre. La deuxième chose, il y a beaucoup d'ambiance dans les stades, beaucoup de bruit. Bon, c'est très bien, mais est-ce qu'il y a eu éventuellement des plaintes, soit de joueurs, soit d'arbitres là-dessus, qui auraient pu perturber d'autres matchs? Et puis une dernière question, est-ce que le président Macron viendra sur des compétitions avant avant la cérémonie de clôture? Merci.
Merci pour tes questions. Sur le bilan du nombre de spectateurs, on vous le partagera dans les prochains jours sur cette première semaine. Donc le chiffre vous sera partagé. Peut-être demain, ce sera l'occasion de faire un premier point. Sur ta deuxième question, sur le bruit, je n'ai pas eu de retour particulier. Je sais que les équipes sur site rappellent dans les temps forts sportifs l'importance de préserver le silence, mais on n'a pas eu de plainte particulière. On espère que les athlètes apprécient l'ambiance et les encouragements qui leur sont destinés. Et ensuite, s'agissant du président Macron, je te renvoie vers le cabinet du président de la République pour répondre à ta question.
Down here, Sky News.
Obviously, it's a very challenging situation, this for the boxing, but ultimately a decision has to be taken, whether it's now or with the new regulations. Would you favour inclusion or safety of athletes?
To state the obvious first, obviously it's not up to me, but the IOC, I think, is always trying to do a balance between inclusivity and fairness, to put it more broadly, also safety. And that is a difficult one and something that we'll have to look at. But that's an entirely separate question to what's going on here, which is a woman boxer being stigmatised and forced out of potentially forced out of a competition. I think that's a different issue. But in general, in terms of safety of the athletes, we're never tired of saying is our number one concern. The athletes are at the centre, so obviously we need to look after them. We need to make sure that they're safe, and there are all sorts of safeguards, particularly in the combat sports, particularly in boxing, to make sure that remains the case.
just now I've interviewed the British Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, who said she said she felt uneasy watching this fight. Did you also feel uneasy watching the fight unfold yesterday? And did you feel yourself for the safety of Angela Carini?
My views are neither here nor there. I watched it for professional reasons. I watched it. And as for Lisa Nandy's comments, again, I can't comment on how she feels or how she should feel. To my mind, it was a qualifying match bout in boxing between two women boxers. If you want my actual personal view, yeah, it was very short, so there wasn't very much for me to really kind of start to follow. But it was over far too quickly for everyone concerned, I think, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, gentlemen, 2, 3 over there.
Hi, Mark. Tom Morgan at The Telegraph. Brett Hawke says 100-metre freestyle world record is not humanly possible. We've had a booed bronze last night. Are Chinese swimmers clean?
We are tested. They are the most tested swimming team here in swimming. 600 and something tests for the team since January. So they are fully tested. And by the way, similarly, ahead of Tokyo, they were targeted is the wrong word, but clearly when there are issues with the sport, with the country, with an individual, then the ITA makes sure that is dealt with in terms of the testing protocols and how many people and so on be tested. But they are the most tested. Can you ever say that with any team? Never 100%, but all the work is being done. Let me get that right. I'm not making any aspersions at all against the Chinese team. Just in general, I would say it's difficult to ever know, but all of the tests have been done, and we continue to see great performances, and that's what we want to see at the Olympic Games. I think in terms of the whole issue with WADA, we've already given our statement. I think I can share that with you later if you want. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mark. It's Mike Keegan from the Daily Mail. Just with regards to the female athletes in the boxing competition, are they, as part of the eligibility criteria, are they tested for testosterone levels before they arrive here to be eligible to compete in the boxing? No, and in fact, as I pointed out yesterday, there are many women with higher levels of testosterone than men. So actually, the idea that a testosterone test is some kind of magic bullet is actually not true. So just, you've said this a few times about the passport and the gender on the passport. Are we right in thinking, and please excuse the ignorance, that this is the main driver behind the decision? If your passport says that you're female, you're eligible for the female competition?
That's the eligibility rule for the sport, as it is for many sports. Sorry, yeah, gentleman over here. While we're over there, I'll come over to you in a second.
Hi, Mark. Jerry Lawton from the Daily Star. It's relevant to what Mike said, so it's just a follow-up on the boxing. If, as you say, athlete safety is paramount, do you not think in this case, when you're aware that there has been a test and boxers have been disqualified, that the IOC shouldn't exercise or basically be cautious, and that something should have been done in advance rather than taking a risk that you might be staging a fight that isn't fair?
Well, as I said before, I mean, as for the tests themselves, we have no knowledge of what the tests were. They were cobbled together, as I understand, overnight to change the results, so I wouldn't want to go there. I think if you start working on all suspicions, then we're in trouble. But I think more importantly, this woman has competed for a very, very long time in women's sport against many opponents. In fact, against Italian boxers twice in the last couple of years, I think. So I think if you start working on all suspicions, then we end up very much heading towards a gender testing regime, which is not good for anybody.
Finally on that, do you think that this could threaten the boxing at 2028?
Well, as I said yesterday, we sincerely hope that boxing will be on the programme for 2028. It's a sport, not just a good sport to watch. It's also a sport which does an awful lot in terms of socially deprived areas and socially deprived people. So we absolutely actively want it to be on the Olympic Games, which is why we took our role in the last two games. But we are not a federation. We don't want to carry on doing that. That's the work of a federation. So we would really encourage those who love boxing, and particularly the national federations, to help us to work towards a new federation that can have that. I'm optimistic, very optimistic, and as I say, the will is there, which is kind of important with the IOC. Yeah. Okay, gentleman over here.
Hi, Henry McMullen from TVNZ in New Zealand. Just following the boxing lines again around the safety concerns. There's been serious concerns around whether or not you're doing enough to protect athletes' safety. What's your response to that?
Well, I can't speak minutely for boxing, but I know because it's a combat sport, there are a huge range of things in place for safeguarding, for safety, doctors ringside, all that stuff. So I think in terms of if you want a question and a response on the specific, it's what's being done, then I would refer you and I can get you an answer on that. But I think it's much better to give you the detail point by point of what is done for athlete safety, and it's a great deal in boxing because it is potentially a dangerous sport.
Yeah, and you spoke about watching the fight yourself. I mean, how concerned, or what was your reaction to watching that fight?
Honestly, I don't
serious
think
concerns there are.
I don't think my view really matters very much. I'm a former journalist. I'm a spokesman for the IOC. I think actually the people you need to talk to are the people that are involved in the sport. I wouldn't be able to tell you if a punch was dangerous or not dangerous, so it doesn't really amount to, my view doesn't amount to anything in this case.
How hard is it to define the rules for gender eligibility?
Well, I kind of went into that a little bit before. It's not a black and white issue. There is no consensus, certainly not from the political and social side, and absolutely not from the scientific side. It's a whole range of different indicators. One of the reasons why we did away, as I understand, with the sex testing is because it's impossible to have a sex test that is comprehensive and works and is not discriminatory. So it's very difficult. But I would also say, again, we have the will. We want, if there is a consensus, if we can get towards a consensus, we would be happy to implement that. But for the time being, we have to go on what we have, which is the passport.
And what have you asked of the boxing sanctioning body? You're looking for a new body for the sport. Was this an oversight not to address this?
No, we've been addressing that for a while. So we've been trying to encourage federations, national federations, to come together coalesce around a new organisation. It's not just something that's happened in the last couple of weeks. Okay, I think you've had 5 questions, so if we could move on. Yeah, gentleman right at the back there, I can see with the hand up.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mikko Günther. I represent multiple Finnish newspapers. To Mark, you are wishing for the consensus about this matter. Will IOC start some kind of process that may or may not lead to changing of the regulations considering this matter?
I think we would encourage consensus, and I think it would be in our interests to work towards that consensus. I know we would like that. I'm not going to make policy on the hoof here, it's sitting up here, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's something that we don't consider very seriously after the games, Olympic Games in Paris are over. Yes, Graham, down here from AP.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, obviously this has been elevated to sort of, culture war levels from the usual places. I mean, you've seen, Donald Trump saying he will intervene, do something. You've got a head of government in Serbia where you've got an EB member turning it into an issue. I mean, the IOC operates at a very high diplomatic level sometimes when it needs to. Are you looking to sort of send a message or intervene with the people to try to calm this down? And from your own kind of media monitoring, do you see that this is being fueled online by, coordinated disinformation campaign?
I wouldn't say that. I have no evidence of that at all, and people are fully entitled to their views. The only plea I would make is that people made those views clear based on knowledge, correct knowledge, and I've seen a lot of misinformation around on social media particularly, which is damaging. And if you put yourself in the position of those two boxers being put in the public spotlight on this issue, I think it's pretty emotionally damaging for them. And then on the second one, yeah, I mean, you see the issue right there about consensus. We have athletes from the territories of 206 national Olympic committees taking part here. There are views ranging from one extreme to the other, and many more in the centre. So reaching a consensus is, I mean, it's what the IOC has done in so many fields over the past 100 odd years. That's what we do, but it is difficult, and particularly on this thorny issue, which, as you say, is part of a whole kind of culture war discussion. And you know, for us here, what I would urge is, and I know you're all responsible journalists, what I would urge is that we try to take the culture war out of this and actually address the issues and the people, and think about the people, the individuals concerned, and the real damage that's being done by misinformation. Yes, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy from the Australian Radio Network and the Sports Ambassador podcast. At the moment, we're waiting for a final decision from the European Court of Human Rights, from the full bench, regarding Caster Semenya. She won an original hearing saying that her rights had been violated with the DSD regulations. How closely is the IOC following that decision when it comes out, and do you think it will impact the route that sports take with regard to DSD regulations in the future?
I would say that obviously we are aware of that and we are following that, but I think it's also a good reminder that the IOC can decide a whole range of things. It actually reminds me a little bit about the debate about banning people for doping for life, which I know many people, even the President a way back, was very much in favour of, but we got pulled up by the courts and told that wasn't possible, that it's against natural justice. So with this case, we will be watching, of course, closely, because it affects what regulations and what rules we can bring forward. So, yeah, we wait and see on that one. I don't know when it's actually due to be announced, but shortly, I think. Second question, if no first questions, yeah. Third, I think, actually, question.
Well, one was a follow-up. Just on now, Middle East, obviously, concerns that there's going to be an escalation in hostilities in the Middle East, given the assassinations in recent days. I was wondering if those concerns are also shared by the IOC in terms of security, and whether there's heightened security because of that. And also, what role do athletes play in not inflaming those tensions at these games?
Yeah, I mean, on the exact issue of security, obviously, it won't surprise you to know that I wouldn't comment on that, but we are confident in the levels of security that we're offering, or are being offered by the authorities. But you need to go to them. They won't give you, obviously, specifics. In the end, as we discussed the other day, the Olympic Games, you know, we don't think that we can make peace. We're not that arrogant that we think we can make peace, but we can help to build a culture of peace. And by bringing athletes from all 206, you see how difficult it is, but by bringing them all together, athletes from the territories of all 206 NOCs, we can send a message, and we can show how life could be if people followed rules, competed together but lived peacefully. But it's we can do that. We can help to build a culture of peace, but I don't think we can ever build peace. And of course, I would also remind you, by the way, that there are between 20 and 30 wars ongoing in the world. Some get more notice than others, but you can be sure that for those countries and for those NOCs involved, those wars are just as important to them and the issues that are going on there. So we need to be aware of all those geopolitical issues and stick to our mission, which is uniting the whole world through sport, through the NOCs. Yeah, up the back there.
Hi, it's actually a question for Anne. And obviously a lot of time, expense, planning has gone into these Olympic Games by Paris itself. Are you concerned that this boxing story is going to overshadow all that hard work and all the other great stories that are unfolding here?
No, we regarding the massive impact, positive impact around the competitions, the success of the first sessions, the results of the athletes, we believe that the games will be overall a great success. We really focused on the next session, the work we have to do for the coming days. But we will do the final report from the success of the games at the end. But yeah, we remain confident that this specific subject will not have an impact on the organization of the event.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, the one thing I would say, and why I read out some of the figures at the beginning, is just to give people an idea of the reach of these Olympic Games. And by the way, probably half the world's population will follow the Games by the end of these Games. That is a huge reach and a huge chance to get our message across. And as you'd expect, the huge majority of people following the Games are following the sport. And that's what we all want. Obviously, we have to deal with these issues, but that's what we want. And generally speaking, that's what we see. A huge majority of people are interested in following the amazing sport and the amazing sites that we have in Paris. I'm happy to take one more if there is. Oh, yeah, two more. Okay, last two. Rob down here.
Hi, Anne. Could you just check the latest water quality readings from the Seine, please? What do they say?
Yeah, so we are monitoring on a daily basis. As the competition will get closer, we'll be able to answer your question. I don't have the last figures of the water samples. We're going to have a two familiarization for the mixed competition that will be held on Monday. I don't have the last figures. We saw that there were quite a lot of rain last night, but we've also seen from the previous day that the works, the infrastructure works, have also a positive impact. So we'll carry on monitoring, and on the D-Day, we'll take the relevant decision regarding the samples result.
Okay. Final question then.
Sorry, Mark, Richard again. So I'm really sorry to labour the point, but I just want to make sure that our reporting is absolutely accurate. You told my colleague from the start that you had no knowledge of what the tests were that the IBA used to disqualify the boxers. Or did I
think the protocol and how it was carried out, why it was carried out, what the rules were, I'm not aware that we knew that.
But you've also said that it's a fact that they were disqualified for an elevated level of testosterone. So
it was a fact that the IBA disqualified them for that.
So
the two could be
the test must I understand, but the test must have been...
We don't know what the protocol was. We don't know whether the test was accurate. We don't know whether we should believe the test.
I see. Okay.
So there's a difference between a test taking place and whether we accept the accuracy or even the protocol of the test.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that's clear. Good. Thank you very much, everyone. See you all tomorrow. Yeah, nearly midway. Thank you very much.